Hello and welcome to this week's review. It's not a new review, this one, it's an archive review. I've said this before many times, but just in case you're seeing this particular video or one of my videos for the first time, click on the above link. That will take you to the beginning of all of this archive malarkey. Watch the first 4.5 minutes of said review, and it'll tell you everything about why the archive reviews are different. Not like the last one I did on the Wharfedale Diamonds. If you want to see that, here's a link. But it's a different style, different approach. It's an archive review. Anyway, let's get straight to it. This is a review of a Parasound Phono Amplifier. Now you can still pick up this particular Phono Amplifier. It's called the Jc3 Junior, and you can pick it up for around £2,100. Now of course that's a hunk of change, but there are more expensive Phono amplifiers in the Parasound range. Now I have a weird relationship with Parasound, both the hardware and also the company. I love some of their works, some of their hardware releases, and I dislike some of the other things that they do. So for example, I reviewed, going back a little while, maybe I can talk about it in another archive review, but I remember reviewing the Halo integrated amplifier. It was a beast, still is a beast. You can still buy that from new, I'm sure. And this thing is a whopping great big tank of a thing. And I loved it. Not absolutely perfect. The review picked up one or two little niggles I had with the design. But generally speaking, I love the thing. And I still heartily recommend it in its price area. After that, I reviewed a Phono amplifier. One of those more expensive models I mentioned earlier. This one was a Jc3 Plus. The price of that one still is, again, you can buy that one still around 4,300 or so. And I reviewed that, I think initially for a UK hi-fi magazine, but you can see that review on my website, there's a link below. And I wasn't particularly keen on that Phono amplifier. I found overall, for the price, I found it to be rather bright. Maybe I'll talk about that particular archive review in the future, which sounds a bit odd, doesn't it? Looking forward to look back. And Parasound, from what I heard, and I only heard this secondhand, I never heard this direct, Parasound apparently didn't like this review. Oh no. And from that publication date, and for a long time afterwards, they didn't talk to me. I didn't exist. They weren't the first, mind you, and even now there's still a couple of companies out there who refuse to acknowledge my very existence. They're not the first, and they probably won't be the last. Anyway, at the time, Parasound was one of those. But hey, such is the perilous life of a hi-fi reviewer. You have to give your honest opinion as you see it, and you have to stick to your guns. Anyway, from later on, from what I heard, and I had no knowledge of this. This was all behind the scenes and out of my frame of reference, and I had no correspondence, nothing. I only heard this after the event. Bridges were built on my behalf by third parties, and I was forgiven, as it were, and I was given another item to review. And guess what it was? Well, you know, don't you? It was another Phono amplifier. And I saw this on my doorstep and I thought, oh no, and we were just getting along. How to tear down a mended relationship via a 1,000-word review. Hey, oh dear. But again, you know, you've got to be honest about these things. I've got to sleep nights, and if I don't do a proper review, I literally don't sleep nights. If I think I've got something wrong, and I've done this before, I've woken up at 2 in the morning and I've ran to I've ran to a laptop and typed a correction because I think to myself, that's wrong, I didn't do that right. So I get up out of bed. Anyway, that's just me. So it was with a little bit of trepidation that I did the review of the Jc3 Junior. So let's get to the closer look section for what it is in terms of archive reviews at any rate, and let's take a little closer look at this particular Phono amplifier. And welcome to the closer look section for the Parasound Jc3 Junior, a Phono amplifier which is about half the price of its big brother, the Jc3 Plus. So if it's half the price, how did Parasound save that cash? Well, basically it removed lots of isolation and separation inside the chassis. It combined internal boards, it removed the Jc3 Plus's dual mono feature, and it cut a few more corners while it was at it. That said, the unit's toroidal power transformer retained the shielding that it earlier had, while there were still plenty of quality parts inside this box, such as REL capacitors, Vishaig-Dale resistors, and a lot more. The design of the chassis was, and still is, intriguing, and one that will draw the eye. So, job done then, eh? Well, kinda. It's a low-slung chassis that only rises a little off the ground, in fact 63.5 millimeters. And yet it takes up a whopping great big footprint of a full-sized component, 437 by 375 millimeters. That one fact alone ups the weight to 5.9 kilograms. Now, I realise the aesthetic element is important, and yes, I see the family resemblance to its full-size brethren and how it might look installed together in a neat stack arrangement, and I offer a decorative thumbs up for that. But on the other hand, because the required internal space in the Jc3 Junior is obviously low in relative terms, I wonder if the design could have been squeezed into a half-sized chassis. You would have saved space and probably lowered the price. Or, on the other hand, you could have gone for a two-box design to improve the sound quality, lowering the electronic noise and all that jazz. I wonder for this particular model if Parasound became a sort of slave to the ornamental with this model. I wonder whether it painted itself into a corner because of the overall range aesthetic. Now, the front of the chassis features a power button and a very useful mono button. Around the back of the chassis you will find an IEC power socket, there's a ground knob, some RCA inputs and outputs, plus balanced outs. There's a toggle switch to move between moving magnet and moving coil, variable impedance knob ranging between 50 and 550 ohms, and a 3-position switch selects 40, 50 and 60 decibels of gain. Setting up my system for RCA use initially, I position the gain at 60 decibels. Any lower was really, for me, too low. My cartridge demanded a low loading of 100 ohms. And that's basically it. So, how does this thing actually sound? Well, let's get to the sound quality tests and we'll find out. Now, I'm one of those poor souls who enjoys prog rock. I know, forgive me. And I turned immediately, as is my wont, to a little bit of Barclay James Harvest. And I chose Child of the Universe from Everyone is Everybody Else on the Polydor label. Now, my first impression from the sound was a slight aggression in the upper mid-range. But on the other hand, there was a really good sense of focus from this phono amplifier and a real sense of precision from all of the instruments across the soundstage. In fact, it was that sense of focus and precision which I felt helped the music to gather pace. It never dragged, it was always quite nippy and fleet of foot. Because the extraneous reverb and other frequencies were sort of tidied and collected en route, the music moved forward at speed, adding to the musicality overall. That is, the nature of the rhythm and the beat were exacting. The lead vocal offered an accurate diction, while the background analog synths were meaty and full of texture. There was more though, and if I was being hypercritical, I would say there was a sense of tension in the mid-range. It was something you could sort of, well, as I say, you could sort of sense it. You could feel a sort of tension in the mids. And I was wondering whether that had anything to do with the internal design, this reduced isolation and reduced separation of the internal components. This meant losing elements of the grand from the grand piano, as air was constricted a touch, but the subtle secondary percussion from the tambourine was certainly visible to the ear without any effort. Similarly, bass enjoyed great impact and weight, giving the music a useful tonal balance overall. Now, I did mention this sense of tension, but high frequency noise in itself was never too visible to the ear. It never really got in the way, it never really dominated. But remember, at the beginning of this review, I said I used the RCA sockets as my preferred connection to begin with, and I thought, I wondered if the balanced outputs would offer any change in terms of emphasis and personality. So I swapped the cables around. Now, balanced mode upped the gain by around 6 decibels. So I moved the rear gain switch from 60 decibels down to the next notch, 50 decibels, and upped the preamp volume to an acceptable level. And was there a change in sound output? Oh yes, there certainly was. It was very different indeed, in fact. What I heard, certainly in the mid-range, was an increase in the natural smoothness of the mids. Also, the soundstage seemed wider through these balanced connections. That tension I mentioned earlier, that sort of strain, well, all of that was eased tremendously, and because of that, there was an awful lot more air and space around the mid-range. The performers, the singer, the vocalists, they all seemed more at ease, a lot more relaxed in what they were doing. Yes, the solid state effect of the sound retained the accuracy and precision, but the effect blended more effectively and naturally into the overall presentation this time around. I then turned to Nina Simone and an album called And Piano, and the track Who Am I?, which is basically all about Simone and the keyboard. Here, the balanced mode enhanced the articulation and diction of the Simone vocal, providing an enhancement to the detail and emotion. But the balance connection, how can I put this, humanized her delivery. The little subtle aspects of her voice were picked up here, a slight rasp here, a wavery note there, and micro breaths flagged up too. A sense of realism was enhanced. The piano, especially in the hands of Nina Simone, retained that sense of chaos or potential chaos, where frequencies could emerge from anywhere and they could go anywhere. Yet you felt this piano was a living thing under her control, with the balanced connections and that throttled back gain. Finally, I tested the moving magnet mode, but I decided to do that with a moving iron cartridge, and you can check out the full reference list at the bottom of the description. Way at the bottom, just scroll down and you'll find it down there. I played an LP from Jan Akkerman on the CBS label, and the track, pardon my butchering, is it called Piaton? It's a Chet Atkins type guitar stroll of ease and richness. Now in the hands of the Jc3 Junior, this particular track had a funky bounce about it. You really wanted to create a selection of neck shapes and to adopt a whole host of facial expressions as you danced around the room. It was that sort of music and that sort of quality from this phono amplifier. The precision and focus allowed the ear to track a host of detail, which added layering and richness to the overall track, giving the music a flow that was immensely enjoyable. So how do I conclude the review of the Parasound Jc3 Junior? Well, in single-ended mode, because of the slight increase in noise at the sonic extremes, you may sacrifice a certain amount of space in the mid-range and a sense of finesse in general terms around the soundstage. But the trade-off, the other side of the fence, is an increased sense of focus and also accuracy, along with precision in the presentation overall. And all of those things really keeps the music moving. The Jc3 Junior though, well, it really comes alive in balanced mode. And if you ever find yourself buying one of these boxes, use balanced mode. That's the configuration I would heartily recommend. I wouldn't recommend going for single-ended RCA. Go for the balanced. That is, it grooved in a serious manner with both an impressive tonal balance, but also a sense of sonic rightness that allowed the music to drift in a carefree and naturalistic manner. And after this review, well, remarkably, Parasound continued to talk to me. So, that's all right then. And that's it, folks. I am done. Thank you very much for staying to the end of this video. And hang on, that's better. Also, thank you very much for your continued support. It's very much appreciated indeed. And while I'm issuing begging letters, was I doing that? Well, I am now, I suppose. Could you possibly click on the, what is it called? The like. I forgot what it was called. Forgot what it was called for a second. The like button. And what's the other one? Subscribe. There you go. I haven't totally gone just yet. Maybe by next week, but not just yet. So yes, tune in next week, folks, because there will be another video. Oh, I forgot to mention. Maybe I have gone. Don't forget Patreon. There's all kinds of exclusive stuff up there, you know. You've got videos, exclusive videos, buyer's guides, all kinds of stuff. My website too, of course, lots of material on there you don't see on this channel. All the links, have a little shufty about. I'm sure you'll find something of interest. Anyway, back to the plot. I was going to tell you, next week, there's another video. There, I'm sure you're happy to hear that. There will be another video on the way, and it'll be coming next Friday or Saturday, as per usual. Until that time, because I think I need to brew more coffee. Hey, until that time, bye-bye for now.